recently got back into Transformers because I heard about the Studio Series 86 line. Now, the Studio Series line was something I thought was mostly just reserved for the Michael Bay movies or things like that. I didn't really pay close attention, but, well, they started making toys based on the 1986 classic movie. Kind of had to get a few of them, right? Behind me, I've got Devastator, Soundwave. They're fucking great. They're beautiful, they're articulated, and honestly, they look like G1. They're not like the Siege toys from years back. But, you know, one of them caught my eye. You know, the mold of the SS-86 Optimus Prime. I saw one that looked like this. Now, he had a Megatron arm. This isn't that one, obviously. This is, you know, Studio Series 86 with an upgrade kit that gives me a Megatron arm and these sick windows. These cracked windows. But when I found out that it was a reference to the Skybound comic book being helmed by Robert Kirkman and Daniel Warren Johnson, all I could ask was, what on earth is going on in that comic book? Part 1, the Energon Universe. Robert Kirkman is known for creating two of the greatest, most important comic books of the modern age. The Walking Dead and Invincible. The Walking Dead has spawned a franchise that, if I might be so bold, has kind of been dead on its feet for a while. How many of those spin-offs are still kicking? Do they still make them? I don't know. I noped out after, I think, season 2. I couldn't hang. I love the comic book, though. The other one, of course, Invincible, which I just mentioned, is a superhero comic book that takes every cliche that all the books of the early 2000s were borrowing from the Ultimates and Ultimate Spider-Man. You know, like The Boys or The Authority, things like that. I guess The Authority came before Ultimate Spider-Man, but still, it was an era of pseudo-realistic, you know, intrigue with modern trappings, you know. And Invincible takes all those things, all those referential things. Invincible is like if Ultimate Spider-Man remembered that it's okay for the main character to be happy sometimes. Kirkman is amazing because, you know, he is very much capable of different modes of storytelling. He is able to write schlock like capes. He's able to write horror stuff. I mean, Walking Dead is so good. It put horror comics back in their niche. You know, that's a genre of comic book that's been dead for a long time. He also wrote Marvel Zombies, which is high camp. But Invincible has real drama. Invincible is really goddamn good. So, him taking over Transformers and G.I. Joe, wow, we're gonna get into it. But, I mean, here's the thing, right? It's my understanding that Kirkman reached out to Hasbro. The IDW stuff, I am, of course, in the process of reviewing. I have reviewed Infiltration, Stormbringer, and the first few Spotlight issues, with a review on the third story, Escalation, coming soon. That universe was done. Hasbro was looking for someone to take over the comic book license. And Kirkman, who had previously turned down licensed books, sent them a proposal, a very detailed proposal, and they were kind of like, well, this is unusual. Here you go. You know, and it's kind of cool that Kirkman swept in like that. Because here's the thing. G.I. Joe hasn't had a TV series since, gosh, they haven't been on TV since 2010. I just looked at my notes. G.I. Joe Renegades. They remember that? I don't. Let's see, they had 2 really bad movies, and then there was like the Snake Eyes one. That sucked. PG-13 ninja movie, yuck. Of course, the Bayverse fucking burnt itself out. The Last Night made just enough money to justify Bumblebee. Hasbro went ahead and squandered all the goodwill that movie generated by making Rise of the Beasts a sequel to Bumblebee and having Beast Wars characters. That sucked. Nobody liked it. It was Diet Michael Bay, which is what nobody wanted. And of course, Transformers 1 is really good, but it bombed. So, you know, Both franchises running on fumes. We need a shot in the arm. Let's give it to the Walking Dead guy. So the thinking behind the new Hasbro comic universe, not to be confused with the old one that IDW had. Again, I will cover that in future videos in that series. But the thinking behind this new one was that they would all be interconnected from the start, right?
Fall back! Get to the tower!
Back in the old IDW days, James Roberts and John Barber, and Margaret Scott, I suppose, they all built this like incredible universe of like aliens and hundreds of Transformers characters across multiple books. And I guess at Hasbro's dictate, the minds behind IDW just sort of threw G.I. Joe, Rom's Space Knight, Mask, and some other fucking thing I'm forgetting into a universe that really didn't need them. So the thinking here was that we're going to do G.I. Joe. Maybe we'll do Mask. Maybe we'll do all the... But like G.I. Joe and Transformers, we're going to launch this universe and they're going to be linked. And, well, Kirkman's big idea was they're going to be linked through Energon because Transformers is all about the search for resources. It's a Cold War property, right? And what if Cobra was also looking for Energon to power its magic weapons that shoot laser beams and do cool things that are ridiculous, right? And what if we stealth launched it with a third book, an original idea? That original idea became Part 2. Void Rivals! Void Rivals! They're rivals in space! Our first glimpse of anything in Void Rivals #1 is of a crashed ship on a remote planetoid. A red fist punches through the shattered windshield. A red fist which speaks and acts independently. This is Handroid. And Handroid is an attachment for its pilot. Because the pilot is knocked out, Handroid is able to take over his arm that is wearing him and pull him towards a metapack. As the pilot awakens, he's startled by a spear that slams into his totaled ride, and he sees his foe, who he was just in a ship-to-ship dogfight with, standing there, totally unfazed by everything. And we get our glorious title card. They get into a fight immediately, falling through the dust of the planetoid they're on. Now, our hero is what's called an Agorian, right? He's got a metal face. His antagonist is called a Zertonian, the green one. The Agorian gets the upper hand, causing the Zertonian to beg for mercy. Are you begging me to spare you, he asks? Would any of your people ever spare my kind? Would you? She responds, probably not, and he's so taken aback by her honesty that he actually stops and doesn't kill her. After a little more stress, they agree to work together, just long enough to not die, so that they can get off the planetoid together, right? They figure that between the two of their crashed ships, they can probably make one working ship. Although Handroid freaks the fuck out because, well, this is a blatant breach of protocol. When something inevitably explodes, the Zertonian saves the Agorian's life. And this is the point where they share their names. The Agorian is called Darok. He is a Han Solo-esque, heroic archetype. And the Agorian, who is female, is named Solila. She is a mysterious warrior who is constantly on guard. As Darok puzzles over how much of the wreck they can really save, Solila comes running back. She's found something that might help. Solila leads Darok to a downed spacecraft that has been buried in the rocky surface of the planetoid for millennia. Seemingly millennia, anyway. As far as they can tell. It might have been there longer. Handroid scans it and detects a fuel cell that can accept what meager fuel they have left. So they desperately attach a fuel line to it, pumping it full of energy, and it starts transforming! And oh my fucking god, it's Jetfire! That ship was a Transformer the whole fucking time! He was just there on the planetoid, crash landed! My favorite Macross toy. Realizes from context clues that he's been offline for millions of years, and, well, in a panic he flies off to Cybertron. He's been gone forever! And, I mean, I guess if you had been sleeping for millions of years, you might run home to check on your houseplants too, you know? Of course, Dark and Solila are devastated. And, well, that was their best chance to get off the planet. All is not lost, because Darok is kind of like, look, our flight suits have components in them. If we take them off and put the parts into the ship, we could put them back on when we get back home. So Lila remarks that she's not supposed to let an Agorian see her face, but they don't want to die. Off come their helmets, and to their utter horror and amazement, they see that they're actually from the same species. That wraps up issue 1, you know. It establishes many things up front. But the biggest one, in my opinion, is the fact that we have a shared universe that hasn't been introduced as smoothly and slickly since Nick Fury showed up at Tony Stark's penthouse to tell him about the Avengers at the end of Iron Man, right? You know, again, IDW interrupted their Transformers books with their stupid Revolution crossover. And I kind of wish it had been like this. Kind of understated. You know, there are Transformers in this book. You can take them out. You can replace the Energon with something else, and you would still have a fun universe. Part 3. A tale as old as time. Agoria and Zertonia are parts of this massive structure. It's a synthetic ring world with a black hole at its center. Darok is the son of Dulan, the Prime Minister of Agoria, and, well, it was his mission to intercept an asteroid carrying a bunch of ice that Zertonia was going to try to get, because they are facing a water shortage. If Darok could stop the mission from Zertonia to get that asteroid, well, that water shortage would give the Agorians an upper hand in their war that has raged forever against the Zertonians. So, you know, while he's flying to intercept Solila, whom he doesn't know yet, Darok passes out from the sedative, which is administered by Handroid, as he takes off, and he has a vision of two worlds at war with their dying sun between them. Two thriving worlds, an unending war, a dying sun. Two warring civilizations must come together or perish apart. Their salvation would be the sacred ring. The heavens quaked as generations were born, living and dying, giving everything they had to the effort. Mothers and fathers taught their sons and daughters, who taught sons and daughters for thousands of years. Generations came and went, knowing only labor and sacrifice. The peace maintained to create the ring would not last. Thousands of years united, now torn apart. Centuries pass. Rumors become myths. Myths become legends. Legends fade with the sands of time. A shared past, barely remembered. Only conflict remains. The voice that he hears goes on longer. But this is all such an unconventional setup with the Sacred Ring world, right? Two warring factions. Where have we heard that before? You know, well, the architects of the Energon Universe are trying to put their own stamp on things, the way all writers of licensed books try to do. Appealing to a structure that is familiar, right? Autobots, Decepticons, G.I. Joe, and Cobra. That welcomes us within. It's something familiar in the midst of all this strangeness. And, well, this is meant to exist alongside G.I. Joe. So, channeling that flavor, that mythic flavor, probably not a bad idea. You know, that definitely lends Void Rival some of the mythic stuff that keeps people engaged with Transformers. And also, the mystery at the heart of Agoria and its Zertonian conflict and the resultant conspiracy that we're going to get embroiled in, well, that's going to keep us engaged. It's fascinating because, well, unlike the mystery box approach of a certain other writer that I talked about in my IDW Spotlight review, this is going to be a compelling arc because, frankly, I don't think Kirkman is going to never answer these things. This is not a mystery box. Part 4, The Quintessons. Season 3 of the old Transformers G1 cartoon is commonly seen as the weak, mostly because of the dictates of the toy line and the fallout of the '86 movie. which killed most of the Transformers from seasons 1 and 2. You know, most of the ones that people like. As the original toy line petered out everywhere that wasn't Japan, the concepts and characters of that season tended to have minimized roles or just not appear at all. The Quintessons are a pretty good example of this. They have 0 appearances outside of G1. You know, they're hinted at here and there in the IDW books. Unless you count Quintessa from The Last Night. I don't. I don't know what Quintessa is supposed to be. There's also Quintus Prime from the Age of the Primes toy line. I don't think Quintus Prime is supposed to be a Quintesson, but who knows, right? But, you know, aside from Wheelie living out of one of their downships on some backwater planet, or the Junkions also flying in a corkscrew ship with Sharkticons, which is crazy because in G1, they were the creators of Cybertron and created all the Transformers. The Transformers actually, their first great war was rebelling against their masters, the Quintessons. Obviously, Transformers media has moved to make their origins more mystical, probably trying to ape other science fiction and fantasy franchises where the origins of the world are a little more mysterious and mystical. But it's still funny that such a big part of the franchise is just gone. Now, in, you know, issue 3 of Void Rivals, Darok and Solila they spent the first 2 issues cobbling together a makeshift workable ship to escape. And as they fly towards the Sacred Ring, knowing they're probably going to starve to death before they get there, they're inadvertently picked up by a ship called the Rockeroid. Now, another character from season 3 of Transformers is on that ship, a giant alien called Skuxoid, and we love Skuxoid here. He rambles about his wife and kids. He talks about how hard it is to make a living in space these days, and when Dark and Solila aren't thrilled about being captured, he's kind of like, well, is being captured for ransom, like, better than starving to death? They run away. They run into a horrible scorpion monster, which is not Scorponok. Kirkman and Daniel Warren Johnson in the letters page are like, listen, when Scorponok shows up, he will be big, green, and purple. He will not look like that. But they slam the door on him, and they come face to face with another prisoner, who is a Quintesson prosecutor right out of the 86 movie and season 3 of the Transformers, right? He promises to repay them if they help him escape. Skuxoid just laughs. He's nonplussed. He tells them that the Quintesson is completely duplicitous and will stab them in the back, but they're free to go, you know? There's no bounty on them, and he's just going to keep their ship as payment for saving their lives, because the metals are unlike anything he's seen in a long time, and maybe he can make some dough off it, right? Now, the Quintesson we meet is not just a throwaway reference. Skuxoid takes him to Cybertron, hoping that Shockwave, who, just like in the old school cartoon, is, administering Cybertron while Megatron is away. He thinks that in all his sinister purple majesty, he'll pay for one of his hated enemies, the Quintessons, and everyone hates them. An errant line reveals that they're responsible for something called the Age of Wrath, which is awesome. It sounds like something out of the Lord of the Rings. The War of Wrath, right? I think that's in the Silmarillion. Shockwave is pissed to see the Quintesson. He reveals that he doesn't even have enough Energon to keep himself going. His fellow Decepticons are in stasis, and he's just like, get this Quintesson motherfucker out of here, and be happy I don't take your life. I love that purple psychopath. No, I don't even like Shockwave. Anyway, the hook for all this is when in issue 5, Skuxoid brings the Quintesson to Quintessa, thinking that maybe they'll pay to have their little bro back. The prosecutor is taken away by the Sharkticons, and as Skuxoid begs for his life, well, he mentions that he has a ship made of metals from Agoria and Zertonia, and, well, the mention of someone named Zerta certainly gets the Quintesson's attention. So the stage is set as Dark and Solila, having learned the dark secret at the heart of their world, return to the Sacred Ring. They've had an adventure together, they've saved each other's lives, and I guess they're gonna be Best friends. Oh, no. Solila just zapped Darak with her awesome spear. Darak is trusting and heroic, but Solila is an archetypal warrior, loyal to her cause and indomitable. Darak's entreaties to trust and Handroid's pitiful attempts to fight back are just no match for her. Solila says they're not friends. They never were friends. More like rivals. And, well, this is the right way to handle the truth from her perspective. Where they're not going to go to their separate ways. They're both going to go to Zertonia, and she's going to handle things. Now, when she's faced by the ruler of Zertonia, everything goes to hell instantly because, well, while Darak is taken away, Solila is also taken away because he knows just by looking at her that she has already seen Darak's face and therefore knows the dark secret behind their society. There's no negotiating. You know, she's locked up with Darak, who is just tickled pink to see her plans just explode in her face. I saved your life. You saved my life and you betrayed me. Look where it got you, right next to me. He doesn't get long to gloat though, because he's taken away to be tortured before he's killed. This would be a downer, except, well, Darak is helped to escape by Zertonian rebels. Turns out, you know, he's not the only one who knows the secret. And of course, he makes the rebels go get his friend Solila, which they don't want to do. And of course, she doesn't thank him because, well, she's Solila. She's a hard nut to crack. So they're forced to flee into the wasteland, and Darak turns to Solila because the wasteland it's basically a death sentence to go out there. And he asks her the question that I think is the theme of the series, really. Do you trust me? Because he knows something about the wasteland, which we'll get to in a minute. Or we'll get to it now. Part 6, The Wasteland. This is a really thematic moment in the series. I chose to cover the first 10 issues because, well, this is where it really gets moving, and it really doesn't slow down until chapter 10, and even then, I mean, it keeps right on moving. This is a great series. There's a gulf not just between our two heroes, and not just between Agoria and Zertonia, but, well, between the entirety of the Sacred Ring and the rest of the universe. The ancient, all-powerful Quintessons know nothing of the ring. The drama on Earth, as we'll see when we cover G.I. Joe and the Transformers, is so abstracted from this that it genuinely feels like a different universe. And, well, the thought of Darak and Solila meeting up with Carly and Spike, or even Duke and Clutch, that's so exciting. Because all these characters are so lovable and interesting. You know, I also find myself wondering about the mystery of Zerta, or rather Zerta Trion. The return of something called Goliant, which the characters talk about in hushed whispers. You know, I want to know... Oh, by the way, and Goliant is what Prime Minister Doolin and Minister Zalilak of Zertonia are trying to prevent. It's compelling stuff. It's interesting. Which brings me to my larger point, you know? It's that, like, science fiction and fantasy are at their absolute best when our characters are at the mercy of greater forces. Where every time you turn the page, or you start a new episode, you're going to see something new and exciting that you haven't seen before. And these mysteries are just some of the many surprises that this book throws at you. The Transformers that keep popping up are just icing on the cake, really. As I said before, you can switch Jetfire out for some other, like, robot or alien, and you would still have a compelling story. But we're in the Wasteland, and that brings me to Proximus. Zalalak is not reassured when he's told that Solila and Darak are in the Wasteland and will probably die. No. He cannot get this secret out no matter what. He has someone floating in a tube, right? And this is the first indication we get that the Agorians and Zertonians are probably not biological. We have a guy floating in a tube. His skin is torn off. We see the creepy metal skull face beneath, and his metal... He doesn't have arms or legs. We see his metal guts. And, well, Zalalak connects to him with a little thingy that he puts into his helmet, which is seemingly connected to his body. And it turns out that Proximus is that guy. The dialogue reveals that he's extremely dangerous. He tried to overthrow Zalalak, which is why he's all fucked up and in a tube. He agrees to chase Solilla without hesitation. And, well, I think Proximus has a connection to Solilla. In issue 8, Solilla remembers her little brother, and the horrors they suffered together are part of her trauma. His relentless assault really raises the specter of their past. What happened between these two? Part 7, Springer, the mighty helicopter. A fortuitous windstorm blows Proximus away, but not before he pulls Solilla's spear out of his body and hits her with it, impaling her. She retracts it like any normal mechanical person would back into her body, but is grievously wounded, forcing Darok to carry her. They're in luck though, because he found the hideout he was looking for. And, well, he finds what looks like a driveway and, oh my god, it's Springer in his car mode. He's glorious. I don't know what else to say. Springer's great. Springer is, I covered him in my second IDW review of Stormbringer, so go watch that. But he's absolutely snarky here. He's ready for action the way Springer always should be, as the gun-toting, sword-carrying, triple-changing badass he is. When Proximus comes charging in, Springer draws his swords, unfazed by the Black Knight's energy blasts. "Your size doesn't intimidate me," says Proximus. "Same here," replies Springer. When Proximus is able to match him blow for blow, Springer gets progressively more frustrated and decides to change tactics. Proximus is so good at fighting him in robot mode, but how much experience does he have fighting cars? It's awesome, and an incredible use of the fact that Springer is a Transformer. While Proximus is thrown off, Springer morphs back, bringing his twin swords down on Proximus, severing several of his limbs. Springer brings them down to his lab and casually asks them where they got their Energon ports on their foreheads. Darok has never heard the crystal triangle on his forehead called that, and Springer explains that he's been trapped on the ring for a long time. Apparently, the Sacred Ring is a giant machine that creates Energon. Part 8. More secrets. So I talked about the stupidity and short-sightedness of the mystery boxes in part 3 of my IDW review, where I talked about the spotlight issues, right? The difference here is that Abrams and Furman, they use the mystery as the story itself. They never have any real plan to reveal it. And I talk about how the Magnificence never goes anywhere. I do know that the Magnificence in Lost Light is revealed to be something special, but listen, that's like over 10 years later. Like, Furman had no plan for the Magnificence. You know, the problem with that kind of writing is that if they ever solve the mystery, boom, your story's done. Like, the mystery is never meant to be solved. It's just an excuse for the story to keep going forever. Think Lost, where the show runs for 10 years, introduces more and more mysteries, and never answers them. Here, Kirkman Johnson and the other collaborators of the Energon Universe have a proven track record of writing brilliant, well-planned stories. Invincible is a sterling example of this. And Kirkman's plotting and skills just lead to every single story, planting the seeds for future reveals. Every character has hidden depths and achieves these incredible feats of development. You know, when Solilla is given some mysterious thing that I'm just going to go ahead and call the Zerda drive, I have no doubt it'll lead to something substantial and cool, as she continues down the path that Zerda tells her she's on while she's out of commission. Look, reinvention is hard. Just ask Marvel or DC, or, you know, legions of fans of things that are disconnecting from franchises and sagas that once defined their lives. Star Trek is up in flames. Star Wars is dead, right? So many things are just exhausted and tired because they keep throwing the same things at us. And it's really cool that for as many things that are recognizable, like, you know, I can look at Jetfire or Springer or Quintesson and be like, yo, Transformers. They're doing new things. They're doing interesting things. And it's refreshing to see. And I'm really excited to see where it goes, right? Now, with all that said, Void Rivals is awesome. These first 10 issues are phenomenal. Obviously, as of the recording of this video, we're on issue 27. I will probably cover it all eventually. But that being said, it's not just good because it establishes a foundation for this latest incarnation of Transformers, G.I. Joe, Mask. You know, not just because it gives the Quintessons a real grounding and something interesting to do, but because it's an awesome new comic book universe for us all to obsess over and make internets about, right? So anyway, look, my next video is going to be about Escalation, the next story in the IDW Transformers universe. But I'll be coming back to the Energon Universe soon, because I'm dying to talk about Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers. So look, are you reading these books? Did you read Void Rivals? Are you a fan of the old IDW Transformers comic book universe? When did you get into Transformers? Is my video your first exposure to any of this? Leave a comment. Let me know. I'm dying to know. Till all are one.